Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Om Ajnanatimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Hang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhi Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Good morning to all. We will be reading today on a very, very divine topic. Tomorrow is Radhastami, which is the appearance day of Srimati Radharani. And the topic of Srimati Radharani is very confidential. We should understand that this topic is very, very difficult for us to enter into. And so we shouldn't enter into it lightly. They say fools rush in where angels fear to tread. And so we don't want to commit any offenses, right? This is one of the greatest offenses, is to think that Krishna is an ordinary boy that lives in Vrindavan, and he has a so-called girlfriend named Srimati Radharani, and think of them on a mundane material plane of existence. And so for us in this Kali Yuga age, what is the first step in trying to dive into these topics? How can we actually make progress towards having any type of realization about the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna? And Srila Narottam Das Thakur, one of our great acharyas, he's written a very important song called Savarna Shri Gora Mahima, the glories of Shri Gauranga. And it's from his book of songs called Prarthana, or prayers. And so just as a preface to what we're going to read, we should understand that we cannot understand or even try to progress towards Radha and Krishna without the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. This is the only way. And this has been stated by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, in his book, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. This is stated in Sri Caitanya Caritamrta by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. This is stated over and over again by all of our acharyas, that the only way to actually understand Radha and Krishna is through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. You get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, who Tuchavat kicks out everything dirty within the heart. And then we have to approach the Radha and Krishna loving affairs through the works of the six Goswamis. So Narottam Das Thakur says, anyone who's accepted the two lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya as his only asset knows the true essence of devotional service. The heart of anyone who gives submissive oral reception to the pleasing and sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya immediately becomes cleansed of all material contamination. So again, to understand Vrindavan, understand Krishna, to even understand who we are, to understand Radharani, first we have to be cleansed of all material contamination. And that's through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, hearing the sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Anyone who simply chants the name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya will immediately develop love of Godhead. I offer him all congratulations by saying bravo. If anyone feels ecstasy and cries by simply hearing the transcendental qualities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he at once understands the eternal loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. So there's the evidence right there to understand the eternal loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. One should feel ecstasy and cry by hearing the qualities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And in the last verse here, it says, anyone who takes pleasure in sporting within the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of God immediately becomes a confidential devotee of Sri Sri Radha Madhava. It doesn't matter whether such a devotee is in the renounced order of life or whether he is a householder. If he is actually taking part in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan activities and actually understanding what it is, then such a person is always liberated. Narottam Das aspires for his association. And Srila Prabhupada writes a very elaborate purport, and I just want to read one section before we get into Caitanya Caritamrta, but it's very important to understand this point, that we can only achieve the understanding the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna through Lord Chaitanya. So he says, Gauranga Gunete Jure Nitya Lila Tare Spure. If one appreciates the merciful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and feels ecstasy and sometimes cries, this process will immediately help him to understand the pastimes of Radha Krishna, which are called Nitya Lila. The loving affairs between Radha and Krishna are not a temporary thing. Here in this material world, we can see loving affairs between boys and girls, but that is temporary. That is simply for a few months, a few years, or maybe a little more. But then all that so-called love will go to hell. They are not permanent affairs. But if one really wants permanent love affairs, he must enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Simply by appreciating Lord Chaitanya's movement, one can immediately enter into or understand Radha Krishna's eternal pastimes. One who can understand the transcendental eternal pastimes of Radha Krishna reaches the highest perfectional stage of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So that being the preface to this Caitanya Caritamrta reading, we will gain so much knowledge of who Srimati Radharani is by starting at chapter 4 of the Adi Lila, and we're going to begin at text 41. And Sri Caitanya Caritamrta being the culmination of all the six Goswamis' literature. Everything that's there in the six Goswamis' literature has been presented in essence by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And so this is very much part of our understanding of approaching Radha and Krishna, that we have to approach through the six Goswamis, who are the disciples, intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And especially Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami learned from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. As Caitanya Caritamrta says, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami would speak every day for about 3 hours on the topics of Lord Chaitanya, very renounced. And he lived on the banks of Radhakund, which is non-different than Srimati Radharani. And he learned everything from Swarup Damodar Goswami, who is Krishna Rasa, Veta Tattva, Deha Prema Rupa, Sakshat Mahaprabhura, Dvitiya Svarupa. Swarup Damodar Goswami, he's Deha Prema Rupa. He's the embodiment, the personification of prema. He knows all about the relationships and loving affairs of Krishna, Krishna Rasa Tattva. He knows all of that. And he is Dvitiya, Sakshat Mahaprabhura, Dvitiya Svarupa. He is the second Mahaprabhu. He is directly the second Mahaprabhu. So Srila Raghunath Das Goswami learning everything from Swarup Damodar Goswami, giving it to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami being our Prayojan Guru. In his Devavali, he writes very amazing works like Vilap Kusumanjali, which is all about the service to Srimati Radharani. And so Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is going to give us the full ontological understanding of Srimati Radharani as he's personally realized it from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who realized it from Swarup Damodar Goswami, and then ultimately Mahaprabhu. So, Emata Bhakta Bhava Kari Angikara Apanid Achari Bhakti Karila Prachara. In this way, assuming the sentiment of a devotee, he preached devotional service while practicing it himself. This is speaking about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Assuming the sentiment of a devotee, he preached devotional service while practicing it himself. Purport: by his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When Rupa Goswami met Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag, Allahabad, he offered his respectful obeisances by submitting that Lord Chaitanya was more magnanimous than any other avatar of Krishna because he was distributing love of Krishna. His mission was to enhance love of Godhead. In the human form of life, the highest achievement is to attain the platform of love of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya did not invent a system of religion, as people sometimes assume. Religious systems are meant to show the existence of God, who is then generally approached as the cosmic order supplier. But Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental mission is to distribute love of Godhead to everyone. Anyone who accepts God as the supreme can take to the process of chanting Hare Krishna and become a lover of God. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is the most magnanimous. This munificent broadcasting of devotional service is possible only for Krishna himself. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is taught the philosophy of surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who has surrendered to the Supreme can make further progress by learning to love him. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement propagated by Lord Chaitanya is especially meant for those who are cognizant of the presence of the Supreme Godhead, the ultimate controller of everything. His mission is to teach people how to dovetail themselves into engagements of transcendental loving service. He is Krishna teaching his own service from the position of a devotee. The Lord's acceptance of the role of a devotee in the eternal form of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is another of the Lord's wonderful features. A conditioned soul cannot reach the absolute personality of Godhead by his imperfect endeavor, and therefore it is wonderful that Lord Sri Krishna, in the form of Lord Gauranga, has made it easy for everyone to approach him. Svarup Damodar Goswami has described Lord Chaitanya as Krishna himself with the attitude of Radharani, or a combination of Radha and Krishna. The intention of Lord Chaitanya is to taste Krishna's sweetness and transcendental love. He does not care to think of himself as Krishna because he wants the position of Radharani. We should remember this. A class of so-called devotees called the Nadia Nagaris or Gora Nagaris pretend that they have the sentiment of gopis toward Lord Chaitanya, but they do not realize that he placed himself not as the enjoyer, Krishna, but as the enjoyed, the devotee of Krishna. The concoctions of unauthorized persons pretending to be bona fide have not been accepted by Lord Chaitanya. Presentations such as those of the Gora Nagaris are only disturbances to the sincere execution of the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is undoubtedly Krishna himself, and he is always non-different from Srimati Radharani. But the emotion, technically called Vipralamba Bhav, which the Lord adopted for confidential reasons, should not be disturbed in the name of service. A mundaner should not unnecessarily intrude into affairs of transcendence and thereby displease the Lord. One must always be on guard against this sort of devotional anomaly. A devotee is not meant to create disturbances to Krishna. As Srila Rupa Goswami has explained, devotional service is anukulyena, or favorable to Krishna. Acting unfavorably toward Krishna is not devotion. Kamsa was the enemy of Krishna. He always thought of Krishna, but he thought of him as an enemy. One should always avoid such unfavorable so-called service. Lord Chaitanya has accepted the role of Radharani, and we should support that position, as Swarup Damodar did in the Gambhira, the room where Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in Puri. He always reminded Lord Chaitanya of Radha's feelings of separation as they are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and Lord Chaitanya appreciated his assistance. But the Gora Nagaris, who place Lord Chaitanya in the position of enjoyer and themselves as his enjoyed, are not approved by Lord Chaitanya or by Lord Chaitanya's followers. Instead of being blessed, the foolish imitators are left completely apart. Their concoctions are against the principles of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. The doctrine of transcendental enjoyment by Krishna cannot be mixed up with the doctrine of transcendental feeling of separation from Krishna in the role of Radharani. So text 42. Dasya Sakya Vatsalya Ara Yeshangara Chari Prema Chaturvidha Bhakti Adhara. 4 kinds of devotees are the receptacles of the 4 kinds of mellows in love of God, namely servitude, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. Nija Nija Bhava Sabe Shrestha Karimane, Nija Bhave Kare Krishna Sukha Asvadhane. Each kind of devotee feels that his sentiment is the most excellent, and thus in that mood he tastes great happiness with Lord Krishna. But if we compare the sentiments in an impartial mood, we find that the conjugal sentiment is superior to all others in sweetness. Purport. No one is higher or lower than anyone else in transcendental relationships with the Lord, for in the absolute realm, everything is equal. But although these relationships are absolute, there are also transcendental differences between them. Thus, the transcendental relationship of conjugal love is considered the highest perfection. Text 45. Yatotaram asosvada visheshalasa ratir vasana yasvadvi bhasate kapi kasyachit. Increasing love is experienced in various tastes, one above another, but that love which has the highest taste in the gradual succession of desire manifests itself in the form of conjugal love. Purport. This is a verse from Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.538. Text 46. Ataiva madhura rasa kahitara nama svakiya parakiya bhave dvi vidha sangsthana. Therefore I call it madhurya rasa. It has two further divisions, namely wedded and unwedded love. There is a great increase of mellow in the unwedded conjugal mood. Such love is found nowhere but in Vraj. This mood is unbounded in the damsels of Vraj, but among them it finds its perfection in Sri Radha. Her pure, mature love surpasses that of all others. Her love is the cause of Lord Krishna's tasting the sweetness of the conjugal relationship. Therefore, Lord Gauranga, who is Sri Hari himself, accepted the sentiments of Radha and thus fulfilled his own desires. Purport. Of the four kinds of reciprocation of loving service, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, or servitude, friendship, parental, and conjugal love, Madhurya, conjugal love, is considered the fullest. But the conjugal relationship is further divided into two varieties, namely Svakiya and Parakiya. Svakiya is the relationship with Krishna as a formally married husband, and Parakiya is the relationship with Krishna as a paramour. Expert analysts have decided that the transcendental ecstasy of the Parakiya mellow is better because it is more enthusiastic. This phase of conjugal love is found in those who have surrendered to the Lord in intense love, knowing well that such illicit love with a paramour is not morally approved in society. The risks involved in such love of Godhead make this emotion superior to the relationship in which such risk is not involved. The validity of such risk, however, is possible only in the transcendental realm. Svakiya and Parakiya, conjugal love of Godhead, have no existence in the material world, and Parakiya is not exhibited anywhere in Vaikuntha, but only in the portion of Goloka Vrindavan known as Vraj. Some devotees think that Krishna is eternally the enjoyer in Goloka Vrindavan, but only sometimes comes to the platform of Vraj to enjoy Parakiya Ras. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, however, have explained that Krishna's pastimes in Vraja are eternal, like his other activities in Goloka Vrindavan. Vraja is a confidential part of Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna exhibited his Vraja pastimes on the surface of this world, and similar pastimes are eternally exhibited in Vraja in Goloka Vrindavan, where Parakiya Ras is ever existent. In the 3rd chapter of this epic, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has explicitly accepted the fact that Krishna appears in this material world at the end of the Dwapara age of the 28th Chatra Yuga of Vaivasvata Manu and brings with him his Vraja Dham, which is the eternal abode of his highest pastimes. As the Lord appears by his own internal potency, so he also brings all his paraphernalia by the same internal potency without extraneous help. It is further stated here in the Caitanya Caritamrta that the Padakiya sentiment exists only in that transcendental realm and nowhere else. This highest form of ecstasy can exist only in the most confidential part of the transcendental world. But by the causeless mercy of the Lord, we can have a peep into that invisible Vraja. The transcendental mellow relished by the gopis in Vraj is super excellently featured in Srimati Radharani. Mature assimilation of the transcendental humor of conjugal love is represented by Srimati Radharani, whose feelings are incomprehensible even to the Lord himself. So going back to how we can only understand Srimati Radharani through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the six Goswamis. Here again brought up that even the Lord himself, Krishna, the feelings of Srimati Radharani are incomprehensible even to the Lord. So what to speak of us fallen conditioned souls in this world? How can we fully understand the love of Srimati Radharani? It's only through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, which is then even given to us by the mercy of Guru. So we'll read that again. The transcendental mellow relished by the gopis in Vraj is super excellently featured in Srimati Radharani. Mature assimilation of the transcendental humor of conjugal love is represented by Srimati Radharani, whose feelings are incomprehensible even to the Lord himself. The intensity of her loving service is the highest form of ecstasy, Mahabhav. No one can surpass Srimati Radharani in relishing the qualities of the Lord through the supreme transcendental mellow. Therefore, the Lord himself agreed to assume the position of Radharani in the form of Lord Sri Gauranga. He then relished the highest position of Padakiya Ras as exhibited in the transcendental abode of Braj. So text 52. I'll just read the English. Lord Chaitanya is the shelter of the demigods, the goal of the Upanishads, the be-all and end-all of the great sages, the beautiful shelter of his devotees, and the essence of the love of the lotus-eyed gopis. Will he again be the object of my vision? Lord Krishna desired to taste the limitless nectarian mellows of the love of one of his multitude of loving damsels, Sri Radha. And so he has assumed the form of Lord Chaitanya. He has tasted that love while hiding his own dark complexion with her effulgent yellow color. May that Lord Chaitanya confer upon us his grace. Purport. Texts 51 and 52 are respectively Pratama Sri Caitanya Ashtaka 2 and Dvitiya Sri Caitanya Ashtaka 3 from the Stavamala of Srila Rupa Goswami. Pratama Sri Caitanya Ashtaka 2 and Dvitiya Sri Caitanya Ashtaka 3 from the Stavamala of Srila Rupa Goswami. Text 53. Bhava Grahanera Hetu Kaila Dharma Sthapana Tara Mukhya Hetu Kahi Suna Sarvajana. To accept ecstatic love is the main reason Lord Chaitanya appeared and reestablished the religious system for this age. I shall now explain that reason. Everyone, please listen. Having first given hints about the verse describing the principal reason why the Lord appeared, now I shall manifest its full meaning. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vrikadir Haladini Shaktir Asmad Ekat Manav Bhuvi Pura Deha Bedham Gatoto Chaitanyakyam Prakritam Aduna Tadvayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhava Duti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Svarupam. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. Purport. This text is from the diary of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami. It appears as the fifth of the first 14 verses of Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. Text 56. Radha Krishna Eka Atma Dui Dehadhari Anonye Vilase Rasa Asvadana Kari. Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they have assumed two bodies. Thus they enjoy each other, tasting the mellows of love. Purport. The two transcendentalists, Radha and Krishna, are a puzzle to materialists. The above description of Radha and Krishna from the diary of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami is a condensed explanation, but one needs great spiritual insight to understand the mystery of these two personalities. One is enjoying in two. Sri Krishna is the potent factor and Srimati Radharani is the internal potency. According to Vedanta philosophy, there is no difference between the potent and the potency. They are identical. We cannot differentiate between one and the other any more than we can separate fire from heat. Everything in the absolute is inconceivable in relative existence. Therefore, in relative cognizance, it is very difficult to assimilate this truth of the oneness between the potent and the potency. The philosophy of inconceivable oneness and difference propounded by Lord Chaitanya is the only source of understanding for such intricacies of transcendence. In fact, Radharani is the internal potency of Sri Krishna, and she eternally intensifies the pleasure of Sri Krishna. Impersonalists cannot understand this without the help of a Mahabhagavat devotee. The very name Radha suggests that Srimati Radharani is eternally the topmost mistress of the comforts of Sri Krishna. As such, she is the medium transmitting the living entity's service to Sri Krishna. I'm going to repeat that one more time. As such, Radharani is the medium transmitting the living entity's service to Sri Krishna. Devotees in Vrindavan therefore seek the mercy of Srimati Radharani in order to be recognized as loving servitors of Sri Krishna. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally approaches the fallen conditioned souls of the Iron Age to deliver the highest principle of transcendental relationships with the Lord. The activities of Lord Chaitanya are primarily in the role of the pleasure-giving portion of his internal potency. The absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the omnipotent form of transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss in full. His internal potency is exhibited first as sat, or existence, or in other words, as the portion that expands the existence function of the Lord. When the same potency displays full knowledge, it is called chit, or samvit, which expands the transcendental forms of the Lord. Finally, when the same potency plays as a pleasure-giving medium, it is known as hladini, or the transcendental blissful potency. Thus, the Lord manifests his internal potency in three transcendental divisions. So, going to text 57, Saidui Eka Ebe Chaitanya Gosani Rasa Asvadite Danye Haila Ikatani. Now, to enjoy rasa, they have appeared in one body as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, I shall first delineate the position of Radha and Krishna. From that description, the glory of Lord Chaitanya will be known. Srimati Radhika is the transformation of Krishna's love. She is his internal energy called Hladini. Hladini Karaya Krishna Ananda Svadana Hladinira Dvara Kare Bhaktira Poshana. That Hladini energy gives pleasure and nourishes his devotees. So when we say Hladini, it's like saying Radharani. So Hladini gives pleasure to Krishna and nourishes the devotees. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami has elaborately discussed the Hladini potency in his Priti Sandarbha. He says that the Vedas clearly state, only devotional service can lead one to the personality of Godhead. Only devotional service can help a devotee meet the Supreme Lord face to face. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is attracted by devotional service, and as such, the ultimate supremacy of Vedic knowledge rests in knowing the science of devotional service. What is the particular attraction that makes the Supreme Lord enthusiastic to accept devotional service, and what is the nature of such service? The Vedic scriptures inform us that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, is self-sufficient and that Maya, nescience, can never influence him at all. Therefore, the potency that overcomes the Supreme must be purely spiritual. Such a potency cannot be anything of the material manifestation. The bliss enjoyed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be of material composition, like the impersonalist conception of the bliss of Brahman. Devotional service is reciprocation between two, and therefore it cannot be located simply within oneself. Therefore, the bliss of self-realization, Brahmananda, cannot be equated with devotional service. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has three kinds of internal potency, namely the Hladini Shakti, or pleasure potency, the Sandhini Shakti, or existential potency, and the Samvit Shakti, or cognitive potency. In the Vishnu Purana, the Lord is addressed as follows: O Lord, you are the support of everything. The three attributes, Hladini, Sandhini, and Samvit, exist in you as one spiritual energy. But the material modes which cause happiness, misery, and mixtures of the two do not exist in you, for you have no material qualities. Hladini is the personal manifestation of the blissfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by which he enjoys pleasure. Because the pleasure potency is perpetually present in the Supreme Lord, the theory of the impersonalist that the Lord appears in the material mode of goodness cannot be accepted. The impersonalist conclusion is against the Vedic version that the Lord possesses a transcendental pleasure potency. When the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is exhibited by his grace in the person of a devotee, that manifestation is called love of God. Love of God is an epithet for the pleasure potency of the Lord. Therefore, devotional service reciprocated between the Lord and his devotee is an exhibition of the transcendental pleasure potency of the Lord. So what does all that mean? Means that when the pleasure potency, when Sri Radha is exhibited by Krishna's grace in the person of a devotee, that manifestation is called love of God. So just to think about how when we think of love of God, when we have that feeling to love God, that is actually the mercy of Srimati Radharani being established within our heart. And that's why bhav, or pure devotional service, is manifested in the heart with the Samvit and Hladini Shaktis, which we've been reading about. They completely purify the heart. And then we're able to love the Lord. And that pleasure potency, Srimati Radharani, that she is that love. The potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that always enriches him with transcendental bliss is not material, but the Shankarites have accepted it as such because they are ignorant of the identity of the Supreme Lord and his pleasure potency. Those ignorant persons cannot understand the distinction between impersonal spiritual bliss and the variegatedness of the spiritual pleasure potency. The Hladini potency gives the Lord all transcendental pleasure, and the Lord bestows such a potency upon his pure devotee. Very, very deep purport. Text 61. Sat Chidananda Purna Krishna Rasvarupa Ekachit Shakti Tandra Dhareti Narupa. Lord Krishna's body is eternal, Sat, full of knowledge, Chit, and full of bliss, Ananda. His one spiritual energy manifests three forms. So again, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Also, Sandini, Samvit, Hladini. Hladini is his aspect of bliss, Sandini of eternal existence, and Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. So this might be a lot to take in, all of these terms and understanding, but this is actually the proper way to even try to explore the glory of Srimati Radharani. That it's not just a light, fluffy topic to rush into and try to understand immediately, but this is why our acharyas, our teachers, they're really diving into the spiritual energy of the Lord, the one spiritual energy, the Sarup Shakti, who's Radharani, breaking it down so that we can understand, again, that the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna are not just material affairs. So that's why there's so much explanation, and really to dive into all of this, there's a lot there. So I'm going to go to text 63. Hladini Sandini Samvit Tvaya Eka Sarva Sangstito Hlada Tapa Karimishra Tvayi no Guna Varjate. O Lord, you are the support of everything. The three attributes, Hladini, Sandini, and Samvit, exist in you as one spiritual energy. But the material modes, which cause happiness, misery, and mixtures of the two, do not exist in you, for you have no material qualities. Purport. This text is from the Vishnu Purana, 1:1269. Text 64. The essential portion of the Sandini potency is Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. Lord Krishna's existence rests upon it. Krishna's mother, father, abode, house, bedding, seats, and so on are all transformations of Shuddha Sattva. So this Shuddha Sattva, or the Sandini potency, the predominating deity of the Sandini Shakti is Lord Balaram. He is the Adhara Shakti, that he manifests the spiritual world, right? He manifests the bodies of Krishna's mother, father, the abode, the house, bedding, seats, and so on. They're all transformations of Shuddha Sattva, which Lord Balaram is the predominating deity of. And for a definition of Shuddha Sattva, text 66, the condition of pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed without any covering, is called Vasudeva. In that pure state, the Supreme Godhead, who is beyond the material senses and is known as Vasudeva, is perceived by my mind. Purport. This text from Srimad Bhagavatam 4.3.23, spoken by Lord Shiva when he condemned Daksha, the father of Sati, as an opponent of Vishnu, confirms beyond a doubt that Lord Krishna, his name, his fame, his qualities, and everything in connection with this paraphernalia exist in the Sandhini Shakti of the Lord's internal potency. Text 67. Krishne Bhagavata Jnana Samvitera Sara Brahma Jnanadika Sabha Tada Parivara. The essence of the Samvit potency is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. All other kinds of knowledge, such as the knowledge of Brahman, are its components. And then, so we spoke about Sandhini, Shuddhasattva, we spoke about Samvit knowledge, and then Haladini, which another name for Radharani. So text 68, Haladinira Sara Prema, Prema Sara Bhav, Bhavera Parama Kashta Nama Mahabhav. The essence of the Haladini potency is love of God. The essence of love of God is emotion, bhava, and the ultimate development of emotion is Mahabhav. Purport. The product of the Haladini Shakti is love of Godhead, which has two divisions, namely pure love of Godhead and adulterated love of Godhead. Only when the Haladini Shakti emanates from Sri Krishna and is bestowed upon the living being to attract him does the living being become a pure lover of God. But when the same Haladini Shakti is adulterated by the external material energy and emanates from the living being, it does not attract Krishna. On the contrary, the living being becomes attracted by the glamour of the material energy. At the time, instead of becoming mad with love of Godhead, the living being becomes mad after material sense enjoyment, and because of his association with the qualitative modes of material nature, he is captivated by its interactions of distressful, unhappy feelings. Mahabhava Swarup Sri Radha Thakurani Sarvaguna Kani Krishna Kanta Shiromani. Sri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of Mahabhav. She is the repository of all good qualities and the crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. Purport. The unadulterated action of the Haladini Shakti is displayed in the dealings of the damsels of Vraj and Srimati Radharani, who is the topmost participant in that transcendental group. The essence of the Haladini Shakti is love of Godhead. The essence of love of Godhead is bhav, or transcendental sentiment, and the highest pitch of that bhav is called Mahabhav. Srimati Radharani is the personified embodiment of these three aspects of transcendental consciousness. She is therefore the highest principle in love of Godhead and is the supreme lovable object of Sri Krishna. So, not to dive off too much, but Mahabhav is only experienced by Srimati Radharani. Now, how is it that others can experience that love of Sri Radha Thakurani, that Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani, in the talks between Ramananda Roy and Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu? Ramananda Roy explains that Srimati Radharani is like a creeper. And on that creeper, there are buds and flowers, manjaris. And so the creeper, experiencing Mahabhav, then spreads to the leaves, the buds, the manjaris, the flowers. And so in this way, Srimati Radharani, whatever she experiences, all of the other gopis that are connected with her, they experience. So that's a very deep topic that's found in Ramananda Samban. Text 70. Tayor apya bayor madhye radhika sarvatadika mahabhava svarupeyam gunar variyasi. Of these two gopis, Radharani and Tranjavali, Srimati Radharani is superior in all respects. She is the embodiment of Mahabhav, and she surpasses all in good qualities. Purport. This is a quotation from Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani, Radha Prakarana 3. Krishna Prema Bhavita Yanra Chitendriya Kaya Krishna Nija Shakti Radha Kridara Sahaya. Her mind, senses, and body are steeped in love for Krishna. She is Krishna's own energy, and she helps him in his pastimes. Purport. Srimati Radharani is as fully spiritual as Krishna. No one should consider her to be material. She is definitely not like the conditioned souls who have material bodies, gross and subtle, covered by material senses. She is all spiritual, and both her body and her mind are of the same spiritual embodiment. Because her body is spiritual, her senses are also spiritual. Thus her body, mind, and senses fully shine in love of Krishna. She is the personified Haladini Shakti, the pleasure-giving energy of the Lord's internal potency, and therefore she is the only source of enjoyment for Lord Krishna. Sri Krishna cannot enjoy anything that is internally different from him. Therefore, Radha and Sri Krishna are identical. The Sandini portion of Sri Krishna's internal potency has manifested the all-attractive form of Sri Krishna, and the same internal potency in the Haladini feature has presented Srimati Radharani, who's the attraction for the all-attractive. No one can match Srimati Radharani in the transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna. Text 72. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavata Bhista Birya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabihi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure, and who embodies the ecstatic potency Haladini. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form, and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. This text is from the Brahma Samhita 537. Now please listen to how Lord Krishna's consorts help him taste rasa and how they help in his pastimes. The beloved consorts of Lord Krishna are of three kinds: the goddesses of fortune, the queens, and the milkmaids of Braj, who are the foremost of all. These consorts all proceed from Radhika. Just as the fountainhead, Lord Krishna, is the cause of all incarnations, so Sri Radha is the cause of all these consorts. The goddesses of fortune are partial manifestations of Srimati Radhika, and the queens are reflections of her image. The goddesses of fortune are her plenary portions, and they display the forms of Vaibhava Vilas. The queens are of the nature of her Vaibhav Prakash. The Vrajadevis have diverse bodily features. They are her expansions and are the instruments for expanding rasa. Without many consorts, there is not such exaltation in rasa. Therefore, there are many manifestations of Srimati Radharani to assist in the Lord's pastimes. So we'll end with some very famous verses about Srimati Radharani. Govinda Nandani Radha Govinda Mohini Govinda Sarvasva Sarvakanta Shiromani. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda, and she is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and end-all of Govinda and the crest jewel of all his consorts. Devi Krishna Maya Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Maya Mayi Sarva Kanti Samohini Para. The transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord. Purport: this text is from the Brihad Gautamiya Tantra. So this is just one tiny taste of what's found in Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, Adi Lila Chapter 4. There's much, much more understanding of Srimati Radharani given, and how this all relates to then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu trying to understand the love of Radharani. So again, to just really drive home this point, we cannot understand Srimati Radharani unless we try to approach her through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Again, the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So again, we can enter into very deep confidential topics in a very safe way through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the six Goswamis. And everything is beautifully given in Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. What to speak of this Adi Lila Chapter 4? We also have Ramananda Roy's conversation with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, which goes in even greater detail, all about Srimati Radharani. But through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's a very safe entrance into these topics so that we don't commit offenses. We don't misunderstand these pastimes. We don't misunderstand that Radharani is non-different than Krishna, and they're not just engaging in mundane material affairs. Really, really driven home. And we see how Srila Prabhupada himself in his Radhastami lectures, of which are very few, and even in Srila Prabhupada's lectures, majority of time, he did not touch upon these very confidential topics because they're not meant for the masses. At the same time, everything is there in Srila Prabhupada's books for us to dive into. So it's not that he's not giving us everything. He's giving us everything, but he is the expert physician to give us medicine in a proper way. To even understand Krishna, we have to get off this bodily concept of life. What to speak of entering into any of the pastimes of Krishna. So there's always much, much more to say, but we'll stop here. If there's any reflections or questions on what we've read today in Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. Otherwise, we can move on to our devotional service.
Thank you, Bala, for such a nice reading and elaboration and highlighting the highlighting this point, as you mentioned, this saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. And you mentioned Prabhupada's lectures. It's interesting because he's in some of those lectures, he's speaking on Varnashram Dharma from Ramcharita. And then right at the end, he says, today's Radhastami, so we must speak something of Radharani. And he would just, he would say very sweet things like, put the flower in Radharani's hand, she'll give to Krishna, or Radharani's humility that she sees others and doing service, and she says they're better than me. And yeah, in one of them, he does a very nice Radhika Stava. He goes to the Radhika Stava, but like you mentioned, he didn't just freely and just loosely just go into Leela like that. I mean, it's just interesting on those Radhastami. There's one like 40 minutes of it is Varnashram. He's talking about Varnashram, and then the last few minutes. So I appreciated how you highlighted, just the importance of being very thoughtful, careful, loyal, and not whimsical, as you said. Just it's not a light matter just to publicly speak about. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll end here.
Prabhu, while you're on here, sorry, are you available? Are you available this evening for Bhagavad Gita Katha?
I'm not sure because we're going to a family function.
Okay.
And we might be getting back a little late, and I won't have internet access.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. All right, we'll see you in a few days.
Yeah. Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Radhastami Mahotsava ki jai, Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Titanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Okay.